time from darts to snooker, because next week there is nightly coverage of the Pearl Assurance British Open, beginning on Monday at 10 to midnight.
Tomorrow at 9 on ITV, a new series of mysteries for the world's most celebrated detective.
Sherlock Holmes.
Your name does not frighten me, Mr. Holmes. What is your business?
I'm looking for the Lady Frances Carfax.
Watson! A desperate game of Find the Lady for Holmes and Watson. The first entry in the casebook of Sherlock Holmes, tomorrow at 9 on ITV.
And now back to tonight and Wednesday's nighttime entertainment here on Thames Television. In a little over 5 minutes, our big film. That's the musical Oklahoma, and is followed by Video Fashion, which looks at celebrities. Will CC Music Factory retain their place at #1? We'll find out in America's Top 10 at 10 to 3. Then we've got Quiz Night, of course, the Channel and Ball video show, 50 Years On, and Jennifer Warnes is one of the guests in Nashville Swing at 5 minutes past 5. Wednesday's nighttime here on Thames Television.
When it's time again to think of something new, lean on pork, lean on British pork.
I've got a beautiful feeling, everything's going.
In this beautiful world of ours, it's comforting to know that all new Polos come with a catalytic converter which reduces toxic exhaust fumes by up to 90%. The new Volkswagen Polo. Cars don't come any cleaner.
Our big film starts in a moment. That's Oklahoma, after we catch up with the very latest news report, thanks to ITN.
Iraq's ambassador to the UN, Abdul Amir al-Ambari, said tonight his government was finalizing its response to the Soviet peace plan. Earlier, Baghdad said Iraq's foreign minister, Mr. Aziz, would go back to Moscow soon. According to French government sources, the Allies have given Iraq until Thursday evening to begin pulling out of Kuwait. On the front line, the Americans launched a series of raids over the Saudi border.
Along the border, the thunder of artillery is incessant. On land, as in the air, the Allies are on the attack. Above them, the Air Force concentrates on battlefield targets. They found, 100 kilometers north of the border, 300 Iraqi vehicles gathered together. They bombed the target through the day and into the night. As the American general briefing in Riyadh reported, there were 2 further battles. In the first, a U.S. company clashed with Iraqi tanks, artillery and infantry. 1 American died. In the second battle, 4 helicopters attacked a bunker complex north of the border. The Allies are not disclosing exactly where.
Initial reports indicate 13 to 15 bunkers were destroyed. Approximately 450 to 500 EPWs were taken.
2 Apache helicopters were involved in the raid and, as on a previous occasion, effectively rounded up the prisoners and held them until Chinooks with guards arrived to ferry them back across the border.
Here, the Foreign Secretary, Douglas Hurd, said he now believed the Gulf War was more likely to end through a land war. The American Secretary of State, Mr. James Baker, said Kuwait would be liberated soon. At a reception in Washington, Mr. Baker said there would be no negotiation on the United Nations resolutions.
Iraq must leave Kuwait immediately, totally, and unconditionally, and Iraq must comply fully with the other applicable Security Council resolutions. Anything short of that is unacceptable.
The President of Albania, Mr. Ramiz Alia, has promised to form a new government following violent demonstrations by thousands of people against his hardline communist regime. Police using guns and dogs failed to control the crowds.
It began as a massive show of support for pro-democracy students on hunger strike. They marched to the main square, dominated by the statue of Enver Hoxha, who ruled Albania for 40 years until his death in 1985. Police were driven back by missiles as they tried to clear the square. But the sheer weight of numbers overwhelmed the police, and with the square under their control, the demonstrators took their revenge for 4 decades of repression. Under the sustained attack of ropes and hammers, the dictator was eventually toppled. The triumphant crowd then carried the 30-feet bronze statue back to the university. It was a display of people power which forced the Albanian president into yet more concessions. He's already been forced to concede free elections in March. He's now promised to take direct control of a new government.
Labour's Trade and Industry spokesman, Mr Gordon Brown, says the Ministry of Defence has already decided to close the Rosyth Naval Dockyard without consulting the Scottish office. He says he has leaked documents to prove it. More than 5,000 jobs, civilian and naval, are at stake. 500 sailors from the base are fighting in the Gulf.
Even as 8 minesweepers from Rosyth with 500 men are serving in the Gulf, now in the front line, that the Ministry of Defence has been planning the detail of a closure off that base, which could indeed be announced while these men are in the Gulf.
That's the news from ITN so far tonight. We're back later on.